Hello, everyone. Welcome back. My name is Kenji Kimura. Today, we'll be talking about cybersecurity in healthcare, specifically focusing on various kinds of cyber attacks. When you hear cyber attacks, you might be surprised, like, why do we even need to learn about that? But there's so many different kinds of way they attack us, and healthcare system is very vulnerable. So by knowing their method of attacks, we'll be able to efficiently and effectively defend ourselves and protect our information and our patient's information. And but when I was learning this, I was just quite surprised how clever these people are when they're doing their attacks. So I don't have any plans to attack, but I got very interested in these methods and their tactics of use. So hopefully you find it interesting as well. All right, so let's get into it. The first way that attackers attack us is by using malware. The most famous one is the use of virus. I think a lot of people have heard of this. Um, it is a bit of a software, often executable, that can self-propagate between computers. However, it usually requires the user's activation. Of course, the user doesn't know that he or she activated it, but it needs some kind of trigger so that the virus can start doing malicious thing. On the other hand, worm is considered a kind of virus, but it is able to self-activate without the user's click or any kind of activation. And it is able to propagate much wider and faster. Ransomware, from the name ransom, it is designed to encrypt and or deny access to the user's computer system until the ransom is paid. It's kind of like kidnapping. And spyware, from the name spy in there, it is intended to be installed and run in the background without the user noticing it, and then stealing all the information while the user is using the system. And finally, Trojans. It is a malware that is disguised to look like a software that you are familiar with, but it is actually a malware, and once you open the software, it starts to do malicious things like stealing the data. And here is a diagram of one example where Trojans are being used. So let's say you have a smartphone and your friend introduced you to a good yoga app or something, and then you go to the app store and download this yoga app, and you look at the logo, and it looks just like your friend's recommendation. So you download it, but it was actually a Trojan. It looked exactly the same, but it was a malicious software. And then once you open it, you your information may be stolen or other malicious activities may start to happen. The name Trojan is coming from the Trojan horse. I think a lot of you guys would know that the Trojans in the Greek mythology gifted this big horse made out of wood to the Troys, but the inside was the soldiers in this big horse. And once they arrived to the Troy, and then they say, "Here's the gift," they came out of the horse to attack the Troy. So that's where the name is coming from, and this malware acts very similarly. Next is network and service disruption. The most famous one is the DOS attack, denial of service. It overwhelms the host network with traffic and crashes the host system. The most popular method is the DDoS attack, which they used something called botnet. Botnet is a group of devices infected by bots, and it is controlled by the cyber criminal without the knowledge of the device owner. So the cyber criminal has a bunch of devices infected with botnet, and then uh, it makes these botnets access a certain uh, service, and then overwhelms the service, and then it crashes it. I think uh, one of the famous incidents of this is uh, in the beginning of Russia-Ukraine war. a group called the Anonymous used DDoS attack on the Russian government so that it breaks down their communication service. Uh, and what's scary is that botnets are actually easily rented and purchased on the black market. Next is man in the middle. It sounds like what, what it is already. It's basically kind of like a spyware. The hacker inserts themselves as a silent pass-through for the data flowing between two parties. And this is important because for us, we have to make sure that our message that we send is encrypted so that even if it is spied, the attacker cannot decrypt it. It cannot read it. And session hijacking or cookie stealing is an interesting method. The attackers do not need to gain access to the authentication mechanisms like username or password. It doesn't require that. What the attacker use is that they take over an already authenticated session of the website. And that is often through using cookies. And I'll show you in the next slide what cookies are. So I think we've always seen these. Do you accept cookies when you access a certain website? And what does that mean? It's kind of like a trace of your work on that website. So, say you go on to Amazon, you search things, and then you close Amazon website. But when you come back, it remembers what you searched in the past. So these are cookies. It's a trace of your work. Um, and the attackers take advantage of this by not having to know your login or password, but by accessing your cookies, they can trace your information. They can trace what you did on the website. The name Cookie is coming from a story where I think it was a boy and his friend is trying to find that boy, and that boy was eating cookies and all the crumbs were falling on behind, so that his friend was able to trace him and find the boy. So the cookie, in this sense, is standing for the trace of the user. Next is deception and exploitation attacks. Uh, One is the cryptographic attacks. So, usually, to transmit protected health information (PHI) and to remain HIPAA compliant, enhanced encryption such as the Advanced Encryption Standards (AES) must be used. So, for example, in my hospital, we use Outlook, and that is following the AES guidelines, so it is HIPAA compliant. But something like WhatsApp or iMessage, of course, they have end-to-end encryption, but it is not as sophisticated and strongly encrypted as the AES. So it is not considered HIPAA compliant. So attackers take advantage of this and does a cryptographic attack to understand the message. And password attack is, of course, it's just what it sounds like. Basically, the attackers try somebody's login with many different passwords. But then you could imagine that the attacker could be uh, denied after 3 tries or 5 tries of these passwords. So what attacker does is actually called password spraying. And this is when attacker use just maybe one or two password, but it sprays it all over to various accounts. For example, let's say the attacker choose the word banana as a password, and then the attacker just sprays banana password throughout all accounts, and one of the person must have a password that is called banana. And then once it hits that person or finds that person, the attacker can um, get into that person's system much easier without being locked out. So it's a very smart way of trying to know somebody's password. And finally, social engineering. It is deceiving a person to disclose private information or perform an action. And I think many of us have heard of the word phishing. This is when you get an email from something or somebody or an entity that you are very familiar with, maybe you work with quite often, and then the message say, hey, uh, please click on this, we need your help or something. And if it's from your boss, you can't not trust it. You have to trust it. And then you click on it, and then it takes you to uh, it goes through a malicious attack. So maybe it'll take your computer's data, or it may take your password or other methods. The last one is unauthorized access and privilege escalation. The most famous one is SQL injection. SQL is a database. It's kind of like Excel, but it is much more multi-dimensional. It's multiple Excels connected to each other, if you could imagine that way. And then to query data from SQL, you usually need to write some small code to retrieve a data. For example, this code is saying uh, to retrieve account number 52019 and retrieve the data, first name, last name, balance. But what the hacker does is insert a little bit of code, say, or 1 equals 1. And then this is telling the SQL that from the accounts, retrieve uh, all the data where 1 is equal to 1 and select and bring in the first name, last name, and balance. Well, 1 is always equal to 1, so it's always true. And it is always true for all accounts. So if it's always true for all accounts, the SQL will bring back all the account name, last name, and balance. So this is a dangerous code that the hacker can just put a or 1 equal 1 and then retrieve and take all the information. And then something very similar is cross-site scripting. This is where the attacker puts a snippet of code, but this is HTML code for websites. So for example, let's say you have a bank account a bank account website that you use often, and then you trust the bank account website because you use it often and it works. But let's say an attacker hacks into this website and put a little bit of snippet of code saying, hi, please click on this to make your account more secure. But it actually takes your data away. But you trust it and you click on it because you trust the website or you trust that bank itself. And what they could do even smarter is that as long as your bank account is open on a different website on your computer, and you're on a different, not the bank account website, and you and then the code is executed on that website that has nothing to do with the bank account website. And then you get a request to click on it, and you click on it, but that accesses the other website with the bank account that is still open by you, and it could take that information. And another similar thing is when you have, say, you have a bank account website open, you logged in and it's open, and then you transfer to another website. It could be anything. And then on that website, it asks you to click on something. And then you click on it, and then it activates and it transfers to the bank account website that you still had open without logging out, and then takes the information from there. So make sure to log out once you are done with using very sensitive websites. And finally, this is just a reminder that hackers are not just from outside coming in. It could be from inside as well. Willingly or unwillingly, the inside people in the organization could accidentally uh, hack or accidentally leak their information to outside. So as a leader, in the organization, it's something to keep in mind. And this is also a reminder that a lot of these threats are used in combination, and sometimes it's very persistent, as in these malwares could be living in the system for a very long time. There's reports of 5 to 10 years, and the malware finds the right time for it to start being active. So that is called persistent threat, and it is hard to catch these. So that's the end of the cyber attack part of cybersecurity in healthcare. Uh, Let me know what you thought. I thought it was very interesting to learn the hacker's mind of how it works and how they try to take advantage of us. And hopefully, it was interesting for you and it will trigger you to learn more about how these cybersecurity works. All right, so I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.